So I'm Raina Simpson, and this is my story. This is my song that the Lord has written for me and my family. We had 3 beautiful children, 3 beautiful boys, and right after we had our third boy, I began to become really sick, just really tired. I just didn't feel that well. So I thought, well, maybe that's why I'm tired, because it's pretty much like I'm just staying at home taking care of these 3 kids all the time, and I just could not balance it, and I was just doing too much. Well, everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, you're tired because, you just had a baby. Never once did I think cancer. Never once did I think, is anything serious. The worst case scenario we ever thought was maybe a stomach ulcer. And so I started having like some more weird signs, like my fingers started tingling. I was really pale. I was becoming my iron was really low in my blood test. And so we kept going to the doctor trying to figure out, okay, my iron is low. These supplements aren't really working. And by God's grace, I think this is God's grace on me, is one day I was at my friend's house, I was swimming, and I went to use the restroom, and my tumor that was in my colon had exploded. So when they went for the colonoscopy, they found a tumor the size of a golf ball. I'm still kind of thinking in the back of my mind, well, there's just a golf ball size. Let's just take it out and be done with it, I don't know. And so we did the scan, come to find out it had spread to my liver. It was in both lobes, everywhere, inoperable. And it wasn't like just 1 or 2 spots to just be a little bit concerning. It was pretty intense. So we moved quickly to get into a treatment center at Marquis Cancer Center, and they have been amazing to us, and they've worked so quickly to get us in. And then the next week we will rush you in and have a surgery to put your port in, because we want to be able to place that so you can have chemo safely through like your veins and get it through your entire body, just to make sure we're really getting the cells good and killing the bad ones. And so it was just like everything was just happening so fast, and I just wanted to get home. I just remember being in the hospital and hearing all this news and chemo, and just every time you hear something, you're just like, I just want to get home to my babies. You just think of them the whole time, because that they have no idea what mommy's going through. And so I had to prepare myself in a car drive home. Like, how do you explain this to at the time, a 1, a 4 or 5, and a 6, 7-year-old. I wasn't prepared for that. I hadn't formulated any thoughts that would be ready to share such devastating news. And but I knew I would be gone a lot. I knew I would be sick a lot. So I knew I had to say something. I knew I couldn't just come home and be hunky-dory and act like everything was fine. And they put this pump into my stomach, and it shoots straight chemo to my liver and in the main arteries. And so we added that in, and we did 6 more months of chemo after that. We were getting closer and closer to the end, and some things happened, and they prolonged the chemo just a little bit longer. But we got all the tests, we did more scans. It looked like all the cancer was gone. We were so excited. We got to ring the bell. We had a ceremony. My girlfriends came because it was COVID, so they all went outside, and we had this huge ceremony. They bought me my own bell, cancer bell, and all the nurses had the bells we all just celebrated. My kids were excited. As you could imagine, it's just like big, huge celebration. Mommy, stage 4 colon cancer. Look at this miracle. Like, look what God has done for us. It was about 2 weeks later, we had another scan, just protocol to make sure everything still looked good, and another blood test taken, and the cancer came back immediately after that in the liver. And so that was probably the point that I just started feeling really, I think I was numb before that, but I think it was at that point that I really began to feel numb, is because I couldn't even feel the pain at the time of being told that my cancer came back. And I didn't know how to handle that. Biblically, theologically, again, I didn't know how to go home to the babes and be like, you know what, God is good and he answered our prayers, but the cancer's back. And it's actually really hard, even when you are in the suffering and in the fire, to rationalize and reason that and not to think you've done something wrong. Even when you know that's not how God treats us. That's not biblical, but it's really hard not to say, what have I done, Lord? Like, did I mess up after you healed me? The first time, did I do something wrong? Was it because I was mean to my kids? Was it because I wasn't present enough? Is it because I didn't read the Bible enough? Maybe, you just really, you really struggle through some deep, deep, hard things. And I would consider myself pretty well versed in scriptures enough to know that that is not who God is, and that God doesn't answer our prayers based on our character and our emotions, but he answers our prayers based on his character, that he is long-suffering and compassionate and full of mercy and steadfast love. But when you feel so much pain that you're numb, it's so hard. Like, I feel like I could sit and counsel so many people walking through this, but when you walk through it, it's hard to counsel yourself, and you just don't know what to say to yourself. And so many times I would have to just look at Dustin or call our pastor or friend and just, can you remind me of the gospel? So we had one more procedure done to my liver to kind of get out that cancer. We've put more chemo in my pump to kind of kill the cancer in the liver. And now we are waiting one more blood test to tell us if there's any microscopic cells roaming in my body. But the good news is we've had scans and it looks like there is no cancer. So if this third test shows that there is no microscopic cells roaming around, it seemingly is that there's no cancer. So as I was going through all of my chemo treatments and would walk into the waiting rooms, I really felt like the Lord was saying, this is your mission field. Where your feet are planted is where I'm using you. And that was really hard for me to understand in the beginning, but then as I embraced that, as I was like, okay, Lord, like, use me in my suffering, my pain became more worth it when I was able to be like, okay, if I can comfort you in your affliction as God has comforted me, then it makes one more day of chemo worth it. It makes one more day laying in bed, sacrificing an entire day, being in pain away from my children, worth it. To be able to help someone else. And that's kind of where Eyes on You ministry began, and Hope 712 nonprofit is because I kept having this image where Peter was in the boat and he was getting out of the boat and he was walking towards Jesus, and the storm was coming. And so Peter would look at the storm and then he would look at Jesus. And every time he looked at the storm, he would drown. But every time he looked at Jesus, he would stay above water. And so I would do this thing like where I would get really nervous and I would be like, gaze, glance, gaze, glance. Gaze at Jesus, glance at my circumstances, at the storm. And then I would just be like, gaze at Jesus, because when we're staring and keeping our eyes focused on him, it's then and only then we can walk on water and perform the miracle. And it's not that I performed the miracle, it's that he performs the miracle. And so that's kind of how we became Eyes on You, and we kind of ran with that. And so our hope and our go and our dream for Eyes on You ministry and Hope 712 nonprofit is that people who have gone through the fire can know that they are not alone, and that when they come to Markey Cancer Center as a chemo patient, they can leave knowing that they have this number they can call when they're ready for prayer. They have this number they can call for counseling, and it's free of charge. And sometimes when we are in that fire, we don't know who to call. We don't know where to go. And so I want our ministry to be able to say, hey, we have a free resource for you, and we can counsel you and your spouse and your marriage. And so I think when I went through this and saw that our marriage that was so wonderful and so beautiful started sinking and going through so much pain, and we had the support group, I thought, how are people going to do this without the support group? So my goal and hope and dream is to bring in Christian counselors and to offer free counseling to each chemo patient that comes to Markey Cancer Center.